Good day, everybody. Welcome back. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, and I have the Olivetti Studio 44 out here on my video table, and I'm typing a letter. One thing I noticed about me is I'm not only interested in the typewriter, but I'm interested in typing paper. It's like the paper without the typewriter, you can't write with mechanical printing, and the typewriter without the paper is like a voice that's been muted. You can operate the keys, but you can't write with it. So you need both. And as much as I'm interested in the minutia of the way typewriters function and how I interact with them, I'm also interested in the paper itself. I've been on a search for finding the right kind of typing paper. And it seems kind of a silly thing to be doing, to be searching for the right kind of paper, because you would think that just about any kind of paper could work pretty good for a typewriter. But surprisingly, some papers work better than others. If you think the analogy of a fountain pen, you can put ink down on a lot of different kinds of paper, but the performance of that depends on how readily the paper absorbs the ink. Does it soak it through too much? And if you think about the way paper is designed, it's engineered. It's an engineered product for the specific kind of printing or writing technology that's going to be used for. So for instance, if you think about the kind of paper used in printers, let's say inkjet printers, inkjets distribute fine jets or droplets of liquid ink on the surface of the paper. And so the paper has to be able to resist the ink soaking in too much and spreading, but it also has to be hydrophilic enough to absorb the ink and not repel it. So there's a certain kind of sizing or surface finish ideally suited for inkjet printing. Conversely, laser printing uses a powdered toner that's then fused into the paper fibers with heat, similar to xerography. So that's a different kind of printing technology. So the surface finish of laser paper is different from inkjet paper. And then we get to typewriter ink. Typewriter ink is different from inkjet ink and laser toner, and it needs a different kind of paper support in order to absorb the ink into the papers, not repel the ink, to be a good surface to accept the ink. And so I've been on this path to finding a kind of paper that works well, but also isn't precious. I'm attracted to really high quality papers from an aesthetic point of view, but I find myself thinking of that kind of paper as being too precious to use. Like I'm thinking about resume paper, high-end resume paper, thick, interesting textures. It looks really high-end, and therefore, in my mind, psychologically, I guess I seem to think of it as too valuable, too precious to write with, at least to write with uninhibited like. I've noticed that one of the biggest inhibitions toward unleashing my creativity with words is the mechanical nature of typing onto paper, and especially rolling in a sheet of thick, luscious, textured, high-end typing paper. It makes me feel like I am obligated to the paper to do as good of a service as I can to serve it, eliminating typographical errors, having as good of a sentence structure as possible. All of these become inhibitions to the free creative expression. I end up serving the paper rather than serving my creative needs. And so one of the ways of getting around these kinds of psychological obstacles for me was to find a different kind of typing paper, one that receives typewriter ink really well, but is lacking the aesthetic characteristics of high-end paper. It doesn't feel expensive. It has to feel inexpensive. And what more inexpensive paper is there than newsprint paper that originally was designed to be read once and thrown away or used to line the bird cage afterwards or wrap fish in? And so what I discovered was this Strathmore newsprint paper in the smooth finish. And newsprint paper is designed to take ink, right? Printing press ink. The smooth surface paper is great for typewriters, but I was able to only find this large 18-inch by 24-inch tablet. And so I was cutting down these massive sheets into smaller sheets. And in order to use the paper most efficiently, I was cutting these down into 8-inch by 9-inch sheets. So I could divide one of these large sheets into 6 pieces. And it barely fits on a 3-ring binder. It's substandard size. It's not as tall or as wide as US letter size. So I kind of made do with this for a while. I love the paper, but it was a little bit too small. So I eventually broke down and ordered me some letter size newsprint paper. So it took me quite a while to search through Amazon to find letter size reams of actual newsprint paper. And I found this Pack-On brand. It's a P3401 is the model name of this ream. And Pack-On is manufactured by the Dixon Ticonderoga Company, right? If that's familiar to you guys who are pencil aficionados. So it is beautiful newsprint paper. It has that cream color to it. It's thinner, more flexible than copy paper or printer paper, which if you've used printer paper or copy paper, if you've ever threaded it into a typewriter and left it in the typewriter for a while, you've noticed that there's a certain kind of a stiffness to it, and it takes on the curl of the machine. So when you unthread it afterwards, it has this almost permanent curl to it. I find the newsprint paper doesn't do that as much. It's much more flexible and doesn't retain the curl of being threaded through the machine as much. And I really like the off-white appearance of this. I don't like the brilliant white phosphors or whatever they have in modern papers that make them so brilliant white. I like this kind of a slight cream finish to it. Well, there's a certain dilemma, though, when it comes to using inexpensive papers like newsprint paper when you're writing letters to people. There's a sense of obligation that when you're writing a letter, you want to use the nicest paper, the best quality touch and feel and surface finish, to use the best grammar and spelling, to make it as perfect as possible, because you're really kind of representing who you are in writing a letter. And this is more so with regard to letters to people who are only casual acquaintances. But if you're writing letters to people who are deep friends, long-term friends, you shouldn't have to engage in these kinds of affectations. In fact, I would argue that it's better if you're able to use a cheaper paper if it helps you unlock something deep and honest from within that you can write down, instead of being so stuffy and formal and not as personal. If it helps you be more personal in your letter, use the cheaper paper if that's what works for you. Well, I do have one issue, though, and that is I still have a lot of this 8 by 9 inch paper that I've cut down from that mega-sized tablet, and obviously I'm not going to throw this paper away. So thinking about what I'm going to do with it, well, it's a 1/2 inch narrower than standard US letter size, so I'm thinking this might actually be good paper for doing those narrow columns for typecasting, right? Because when you typecast onto your blog, you want the line length to be short enough so that a person reading it on a mobile device can read it legibly. It's not like 12 character per inch and a 8-inch wide line, like really tiny on a phone. No, you want kind of like shorter lines for typecasting. So this paper might actually be really good for that. So this is also going to get me maybe motivated to doing more blog articles. I just published a blog article yesterday on my blog, joevancleave.com. And the last time I'd previously blogged was all the way back in September of this year. So, wow, I really have to catch up on getting some blog articles written. Got plenty of paper for it. No excuse, is there? No. Well, I wish you the very best in your search for the ideal paper-typewriter combination that will unleash your creativity. Drop a note down below. Let's have a discussion about typing paper. And until next time, have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.